Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this event. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes for the last few people to join, so we'll start at about 5:01. In the meantime, please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us what your name is and the organisation you work for. That would be really great. Okay, I think we should make a start. I think there'll still be people joining, but we'll make a start. My name's Vicky Gough, and I'm the lead person for modern foreign languages in the UK at the British Council in London. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to this event to explore the findings of the Language Trends Report, Ireland. So Language Trends England started more than 20 years ago, and is now a really valuable source of data for us on the changing picture of language learning in England. It's useful for us, and it's useful for stakeholders like our Department for Education and other people. More recently, we started Trends Wales, Trends Northern Ireland and Trends Scotland. And so we are absolutely delighted to have partnered with the PPLI to work together on Language Trends Ireland. So the programme for this evening, in a minute, I'm going to hand over to Karen Ruddock, who's director of the PPLI. Then Ian Colleen and Helen McKelvey from Queen's University Belfast, who are the investigators, the researchers for language trends, will give a brief overview of the findings. Then we have a panel of 4 brilliant speakers who will give their take on the results. So we have Cathy Jones, who's the principal of Bremore Educate Together Secondary School, Mairéad O'Driscoll, representing teacher professional networks, Jenny Bruen from Dublin City University, and Giovanna Rodriguez da Silva, who's a pupil at Mount Carmel School. Then after that, there'll be plenty of time for questions from you. So please introduce yourself in the chat, and as we go along, if there's any questions you have for any of the speakers, please put them in the chat and we'll come to those as we go along. So now I'm going to hand over to Karen to give her introduction.
Vicky. Yeah, I just want to welcome everybody to the webinar on behalf of PPLI. We were very pleased to have been approached by British Council Ireland on behalf of the Language Trends programme to have the research extended to Ireland. It's been a pleasure getting to know British Council Ireland and to work with Ian and his team in Queen's. We've collaborated with Ian on other projects over the years, and I suppose this research is very timely in the context of our current foreign languages and education strategy coming to an end and looking at the development of a follow-on strategy. There's a lot in the report that highlights both the successes of the current strategy, but also the challenges that remain to be addressed in the next one. So back to you, Vicky. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Karen. So now I'm going to hand over to Ian and to Helen, who are going to give us a brief overview of the results of this first Language Trends Ireland.
Hello, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. My name is Ian Colleen, and it's my pleasure to be the principal investigator on the British Council's Language Trends project. This report has been written in collaboration with Dr. Helen McKelvey, who's also here to speak this evening, Dr. Jane Duff and Dr. Natalie Finlayson. So it really is a team effort. We want to say a particular thanks to Post-Primary Languages Ireland and British Council Ireland for commissioning the research, and also say thank you to all of the teachers and pupils who have taken part, without whom this report would not be possible. Moving on then to our next slide, we will get a bit of a bigger overview of the Language Trends series. As Vicky has said, this report is now in the 4 nations of the UK and also for the first time in the Republic of Ireland. We approach this in the spirit of collaboration, and we approach this in the spirit of open-mindedness and learning. There's definitely lots that the UK nations can learn from what's happening in the Republic of Ireland, and there's also lots that the Republic of Ireland can perhaps learn too from England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, other Anglophone jurisdictions. You can find all of the reports housed on the British Council research website. A quick Google search for British Council language trends will bring you to that. So moving onwards, what did we do in Language Trends Ireland? For Language Trends Ireland, we set out with the research question of what is the current status for languages teaching and learning in Ireland's schools. And we set out to assess the impact of policy measures in relation to modern foreign languages and to present an overview of the current context of MFL provision in the Irish school system, based not only on the quantitative evidence gathered, but also on those qualitative views expressed by school leaders and students. We created 3 surveys which were quite in-depth. Each had over 35 questions. One for senior leadership in post-primary schools, one for first-year students in post-primary, and one for fifth-year students in post-primary. Surveys were all available in both English and Irish, with Irish responses translated back into English for analysis. Moving on to the next slide, we just want to share the policy context for those of you who are joining us from the UK this evening, or those of you who are joining us this evening from further afield. In the 26 counties of the Republic of Ireland, education is organised along the lines of primary education, which extends from age 5 to 12. There are junior and senior infants, and they are arranged into 6 classes from first class through to sixth class. The junior cycle is at post-primary, and that extends from ages 12 to 15 from first year to third year. At age 15, the majority of pupils, or students, should I say, will take an optional transition year in their 4th year. So that's a year that has very little pressure in it in terms of examinations. It's a time for young people to develop and to explore the person that they're becoming. And if there's anything that the UK could learn from the Irish school system, it is the advantages of the transition year. Pupils or students then move into 5th and 6th year and study for their leaving certificate at the end of 6th year. Unlike the UK, Ireland has a very well conceived strategy for the development of modern foreign languages, and that's called Languages Connect, and is operationalised by a wonderful team in Post-Primary Languages Ireland. The strategy has been running since 2017 and it will end this year, 2026, but there will be another strategy developed to take us through the next 10 years. The overall aim of this strategy is to improve language proficiency of the entire population of Ireland, diversify and increase the uptake of languages, increase awareness of the importance of language learning, and enhance employer engagement. Post-Primary Languages Ireland is the dedicated unit which provides expertise and support for foreign languages education in Ireland, and it's funded by Ireland's Department for Education and Youth. They've got loads of great initiatives underway, in particular the Say Yes to Languages primary module, which is now being extended across all schools on the island, and the Think Languages campaign that focuses on transition year and helps young people to see the value of languages for further learning. Moving on to the next slide, we'll see who responded to our survey. So we received responses from almost 2,500 individuals. There were 134 schools which responded. The majority of those were to be found in the Leinster area of Ireland. That's over towards the Dublin area. We had 1,309 first-year post-primary students and 888 fifth-year post-primary students. So this report is representative of those 2,500 voices which have influenced what we're going to talk about this evening. Across all of our surveys, we know that Ireland is a really multilingual nation, and there were over 100 different home languages recorded, the most common being Polish, Spanish, and Russian. Ireland, of course, is a bilingual nation, with all young people expected to learn Irish and English across the full age range of schooling up to age 18. But when we look at the rich tapestry of languages that are offered, it really is phenomenal. One thing that really stood out for me is the number of languages that can be taken at age 18 for the Leaving Certificate. Over half of the subjects available for examination in Ireland are in languages, and that is something that I think really needs to be celebrated. I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Dr. Helen McKelvey, who will take a deeper dive into the findings of our survey.
Thank you so much, Ian. So I want to start by looking at some examinations data from the State Examinations Commission. So you can see here for the junior cycle, so that's the 1st to 3rd years of post-primary education. You can see very clearly that dark blue line at the top. French is the most common language being taught in post-primary schools in the junior cycle, but you do notice a sort of decline there at the top. But what's really important to note, both in this graph, but also in the one we'll look at in a minute on Leaving Certificate entries as well, is that whilst the number at the top, that French line, might be declining slightly, the total number of students taking a language at these stages has actually remained fairly consistent from 2015 through to 2025. So when we add up French, German, Italian, Spanish, and all of the other languages available at Leaving Certificate, that number of students is very consistent, and it is very high. So yes, French has experienced a slight decline, but Spanish, you can see very clearly, has seen significant increase in the last 10 years. Italian has remained consistent, and German has had a slight decline. You may notice that little gap from 2020 and 2021 when there were no exams in the junior cycle. In terms of how this is organised at school, about 60% of responding schools said that studying a language remained mandatory in their school. So even though that's not something that comes from a policy level within schools, they're choosing to encourage their students to study languages, and only 5 schools noticed that they had, or noted that they had exemptions for studying modern foreign languages. The choice for students is most often between French and Spanish, and very few schools offer more than one language in the junior cycle. But uptake is extremely high, as you can see, and only 1 in 10 schools has seen any sort of decrease in those numbers over the last 3 years. So in the junior cycle, we see languages are in a very strong position, and that continues on then into senior cycle to Leaving Certificate. So here are the statistics for examinations at the Leaving Certificate. French, as you can see, remains the language with the highest participation, but has also experienced a decline in this period. Spanish, that light blue line, again, a very similar graph to the one we just looked at. Spanish very much picking up, with German and Italian remaining quite consistent. There are other curricular languages that you can take for the Leaving Certificate, and they've all seen an increase in this period as well, although they have fewer entries than the ones on this particular graph. Russian in particular has seen a significant increase since 2024. What's also very different in Ireland compared to the 4 regions of the UK is that there are exams, Leaving Certificate exams, that can be taken in non-curricular languages. So for students who have as their first language a non-curricular EU language, they can take a Leaving Certificate exam in that. And you can see the variety of languages that are offered for that Leaving Certificate qualification. You can see also the peak that we have reached here in 2025 with the introduction of a non-curricular Leaving Certificate exam in Ukrainian, which is the only non-EU of these languages. So senior cycle languages are also in a very healthy place with a very high uptake compared to the UK regions. So we've got 70% of schools reporting that more than 20 students are studying 1 or more MFL for the Leaving Certificate, which is an extremely high participation rate in languages. You can see also there in the blue that 81% line on the graph. In transition years, students can often try other languages, and that's a good opportunity for schools to introduce languages beyond those sort of core 4 that we looked at. And Chinese is the most common language to be introduced there. You can see also, I've mentioned there, the increase in Spanish is noted in a lot of schools, as well as the decrease in French and German. And these changes are primarily driven by student demand. The requirement for matriculation into higher education as well, which historically required an MFL at Leaving Certificate, but that is changing. And the constraints of timetabling as well have an impact on languages being taken to Leaving Certificates. We also asked schools about international engagement, and it's incredible to see how international and outward-facing post-primary schools in Ireland are. And 90% of schools state that their senior leadership team values and supports international engagement, and 91% of schools have some sort of international dimension. You can see from the pie chart there, involvement with the cultural institutes, involvement with the Erasmus Plus programme, having international partner schools, and also things like pen pals, language assistants, all form part of the international dimension of life in Irish post-primary schools. But time and finance are also potential barriers to these. We asked our senior leaders who responded what the biggest challenges to a high quality learning experience in MFL were. And overwhelmingly, you can see that students from the perspective of SLT don't see necessarily the relevance of learning a modern foreign language for their future careers. And they also perceive that there's a lack of opportunities for students to practice that language outside of the classroom. 55% of our respondents also noted that teacher recruitment can be an issue, and there were other things such as funding and time and a revaluing of languages that they felt were important and challenging. However, there is lots that's working well in post-primary schools in Ireland when it comes to teaching languages. And there's lots in the report, and I hope that you have read it and you've taken the time to read these quotations from our respondents, because there's really such encouragement in this. More than 60% talked about the quality, dedication, and enthusiasm of the teachers. And it's really clear that there's this broader culture of multilingualism, of plurilingualism in Irish post-primary schools. There are nonetheless areas for improvement, but on the whole, they present a very positive picture. So I'll now move on to the student perspective. And what is great, and what you can see from these two charts on the slides, is how much students enjoy learning languages. So in both first year and in fifth year, 75% of students said they enjoyed languages and they enjoy speaking languages and think it's useful to be able to speak a foreign language. They're interested in the culture and history of them, but for those who don't necessarily want to study a language or who don't study, it's often due to a kind of perceived difficulty or an idea of the workload for languages being significantly higher than other subjects that holds them back. We asked if our responding students had been abroad, and almost all of them had been on trips outside of Ireland. The most common destinations were Spain, France and Italy, and Great Britain, obviously, but when we're talking about foreign languages, we focus on Spain, France and Italy, and that's reflected in the languages that students would like to learn. So if they haven't already started them, Spanish and Italian were the two languages that came out as the languages that they would most like to learn. Both sets of students also believe that the greatest benefit of learning languages is being able to speak the languages of the countries they visit. So all of this tallies in together. But despite their enjoyment and their appreciation of the usefulness of language, it's not something that many of our students see as a vital part of their working lives in the future. The main career paths that students see are teaching and translation, and very few consider things like diplomacy, international business or tourism, all career paths which languages are extremely beneficial for. And so it would be great to see careers guidance, more specific careers guidance, and that's something we might talk about a little bit more during the questions. We also asked our fifth year students about enrichment and things that they have done beyond the classroom to expand their language learning experience. Remember, fifth year students have, for the vast majority of them, have come through the transition year, and that's what we see as being so beneficial for them in terms of their enjoyment of language learning. Most of the exchanges and trips that they've been involved in through school come in the transition year, and there's really good engagement with Think Languages events, both local and national, as run by PPLI. When we ask them about things they might like to improve, what comes through really clearly, again, in both year groups, is this focus on spoken language and being able to speak more in the classroom, particularly in the first year students, but with the fifth year students outside the classroom, and wanting more support for outbound mobility, so that they can get more opportunities to speak with native speakers of the languages that they are learning. So in all of this, I've really just fleshed out what our headline findings are. You can find those at the start of our report, but I've dealt with most of these things through these slides. So all it remains for me to say is to thank once again our partners at the British Council and Post-Primary Languages, and especially the students and the teachers who responded to our survey. Thank you to everyone who has helped us research and write this report. It has been a really interesting report to work on, and so we thank you all, and we really look forward to hearing now from our panel and from those of you who are listening.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ian and Helen. There's such a lot of rich information and data in there, and there's so much for us in UK countries to be jealous of. The numbers taking languages, the variety of language qualifications that you can take, and the international engagement, which I hope now we're back in Erasmus, we can start to pick up on that. So now I'm going to hand over to each of the panel in turn to talk for about 5 minutes about their impressions, anything that particularly struck them from the results. And I'm going to ask Mairéad O'Driscoll if you'd like to go first.
No problem. Good afternoon. As the language teacher in Ireland, I would describe the report as both encouraging and worrying at the same time. I believe the report isn't an isolated document, and that it clearly aligns with the broader direction of curriculum reform in Ireland at the moment. So I found it very positive to see that the research conducted now for this report, it was aligning nicely with the consultation documents, curriculum specifications, the classroom reality, and that everything is fitting together nicely, which again kind of encourages and promotes the idea that we really are, it is a kind of a systemic reform that we're looking at the moment in Irish language education, and not kind of isolated initiatives. So again, I suppose the direction of language education, as we know, as was clear in the report, was that the students want more authenticity, more communication, and greater multilingualism. And again, this is all very positive for us in the classroom. Of course, it can be pessimistic at times in the report, talking about the declining numbers and the strategic subject choices, and the pressure from the university matriculation changes. But again, I suppose I kind of wanted to focus on the positives, in that even if certain languages are in decline, as Helen mentioned, overall numbers at junior cycle are at the same level. And again, the broader picture is that Ireland is currently attempting to redesign language education in response to the challenges that were highlighted. So I think we're kind of at a really significant point in language education in Ireland at the moment. This clear trend obviously came through with the rapid rise of Spanish, which obviously stood out. I'm lucky to teach in a school that has French, German, Spanish and Italian. And again, I suppose there was the mention of the advantages and how the students see Spanish as more accessible and enjoyable. And even senior leaders mentioned that students believe it's easier, and that perhaps it's more suited for students with additional needs. So again, I suppose this was just stood out to me in that, you know, the numbers for French, for example, for Leaving Cert dropping from 26,000 in 2015 to 18,000 in 2025. So again, it's just that it's a dramatic change. And I suppose my concerns would be around why students are choosing Spanish And again, are they not choosing French and perhaps or German because the confidence or the resilience in language learning is weaker than before? Or is it linked to perceived difficult, kind of perceptions of difficulty or assessment? And again, I was really delighted as an Italian teacher to see the positive and the appetite for Italian. So again, hopefully going forward, that is something we can grow on in the country, perhaps with the primary school curriculum. It's a great opportunity there. I just felt in the same area, I felt it was important that teachers are supported on the ground in this area. There is considerable concern among teachers regarding their futures when there are language trends. So again, some French teachers are wondering, do they need to retrain as Spanish teachers and looking at the trends? But again, as the report said, teachers are passionate and they're doing great work on the ground and are working passionately to pass on the love of languages to their students. So it's important that we support them with the challenges that they face, the limited teaching time for skills development, the mixed level, mixed ability classes, the large class sizes, all of these aspects that were mentioned as challenges in the report. Again, another aspect is the expanding post-primary language options is exceptionally positive, but again, it's important that we sustain the long established languages also in the language departments within schools. So a lot of subjects now find a lot of pressure to sell their language. And again, it's important that we don't add to an already heavy workload for teachers, but rather, that we can unite as an MFL department working together to promote the language learning. As mentioned by Helen, of course, the matriculation aspect has affected us greatly. And again, perhaps it's not to be seen yet, but in my opinion, I would fear that it's one of the most significant long-term dangers in the report. Teachers are already on the ground seeing the effect on senior cycle numbers, the historically kind of protecting of the language learning with the university matriculation. So again, it's just important that we acknowledge that and try and counteract it as best we can. I had also mentioned the disappointment with regards to the career guidance, as mentioned by Helen, but I thought it was very positive and encouraging that 4 out of 5 students still recognised the value of language learning. So again, I think that shows the success of the strategy over the last 10 years, the Language Connect strategy, and I think it's vital that the momentum continues at this point and that we protect the language learning. With regards to the positive attitude of students was excellent with regard to learning, and that they enjoyed classes and that they were positive, and that the focus was on lessons being interactive, communication focused and connected to real life, that the students could see the benefit. And again, I think this links nicely in with the revised junior cycle specification that we'll be introducing in September with the action-orientated approach, where language learning, the emphasis on the spontaneous interaction, the oral fluency, reflective learning. I think it's all positive steps in engaging with what the students want more of. So I think that's a positive aspect. And again, I suppose traditionally language education has been very maybe heavily exam orientated and kind of dominated by kind of predictable written outcomes, etc. Whereas at least the reforms, I feel, are attempting to have this more balanced approach, which sounds like from the report what is needed on the ground. Unfortunately, as we know in Ireland, the exam system does still shape practice on the ground, and although they enjoy the languages, students still are, and as the report indicated, showed that the examination pressure and the CAO strategy continue to dominate the decision making. Again, as we said, the predictability of marks, the university entry requirements, the perceived difficulty, and again, this is why they are dropping them after junior cycle or doing them at ordinary level to satisfy a school requirement, for example. But again, this is where it becomes kind of more transactional rather than communicative and cultural. It's fulfilling, and that's what we need to be careful of. But I think the attitude is changing slightly from what success means in language learning. I think, you know, quite often it meant high grades and written accuracy and preparing for exams, whereas I think now we're moving towards more you know, multilingual awareness, learner autonomy, intercultural understanding. And I think that comes through, that is what motivates the students, and that was what came through in the report. And I think recognizing the heritage languages, recognizing the diversity and the kind of multilingual identity of the students, as mentioned in the report, again, all of that values the students' full linguistic repertoire. It gives them a chance to use all of their knowledge. And again, I think it's kind of a profound kind of shift, but I think kind of educationally, but also socially. And I think it's very positive. TY, as we know, is a very successful program, as mentioned. Again, it's exceptionally important for introducing new languages, but also giving so many opportunities of different approaches, to try different approaches during the year. And the only thing that stood out with regards to the international experiences, again, was just to ensure that, you know, that it doesn't become a barrier, that all students will have, you know, opportunities. We don't want any inequality to arise, as mentioned, but that it's important that students can see the real life application.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Right.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on and ask Jenny Bruen if you would like to give your feedback now. And please, if you have any questions for any of the speakers, please put them in the chat.
Thanks, Vicky. I would like to start by complimenting the authors. It's a really clear and comprehensive report, and it is really useful to have all of these figures at our fingertips now. In many ways, the report will serve almost as a form of a handbook for those of us working on research related to language learning in Ireland and further afield. So thank you for that. I spent many hours searching for those statistics. It's lovely to have them all together in one place. What does also stand out for me personally is the high value placed on language learning in Ireland. The survey results do show very clearly that senior management and students in junior and senior cycles support languages, which is lovely to see. The other side of the coin for me is, while students report that enjoying learning languages and valuing an ability to speak languages, they don't seem to recognise the value for careers. So I'm speaking today from a university standpoint, and this is where I see the main message from this report for us. We see students coming to us to study languages thriving in their careers. They go into many fields, not just as teachers, translators, and interpreters. Those are the careers mentioned in the report and are highly valuable. But also many of them go on to work in international business, in law, diplomacy, with the EU, European affairs. They have fantastic careers. So what I think is really important for us is we must tell the stories of our alumni and make the fulfilling opportunities open to language graduates and graduates who have languages as a part of their degrees really clear and really obvious. This is a big takeaway for me. So we must tell these success stories. It's something that we do already, but we need to do it more. And in order to do it better, we're tracking our alumni so that we know exactly what they do, not just when they leave, but as their careers progress. So then we know the stories to tell, and we can tell these stories in our materials. So that's what we need to do. I think also from the report, it's important to me that we show that there are many ways to study languages. So you saw those really high levels at post-primary, which is also called secondary in Ireland. They drop into third level. And we want to reverse that. So we want to show students that you can study languages on their own, so as a specialist degree. But if you don't want to put all your eggs into one basket, you can study language and another discipline. The third thing we're trying to do, for example, in Dublin City University, which is where I'm based, is to allow the study of a language in addition to the study of a degree, free of charge and for extra credit. So we need to let secondary school students know that all of these options are available and open to them. The second point is related. Don't worry, I've only got 2 points. And it concerns the shortage of language teachers that was raised in the report. So obviously universities provide specialist undergraduate and postgraduate degrees to train second level language teachers. But sometimes the level of demand for places on these is a little lower than we would hope. So my second key takeaway really is that we need to promote language teaching as an attractive career. So basically, both of the points that I'm making relate to the value of studying languages and the need to convince secondary school students of this. Languages are thriving in Ireland in many ways, but there are some warning signs, and complacency would be dangerous. So we need to continue to promote language learning in every way that we can. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm going to hand over to Kathy now, Kathy Jones, to ask for your thoughts.
Hi, good evening. How are you? I suppose just to start, you know, when you get a survey in as a school leader, you were inundated with surveys, and it was only when I was reading the report that I realised this is why we do the surveys, this is why we take the time, because the report is excellent and it provides us with a lot of information and food for thought. So like I've pulled out a few findings from the report that are particularly relevant for school leaders, especially in relation to student uptake and their interest, staffing, the curriculum planning, school culture and planning for the future. I suppose the findings highlight, which I was delighted to see, the excellent practices within our schools, and it also provides guidance on how to strengthen these excellent practices or to share what's going well in some schools or in other schools. We could share among ourselves those excellent practices, and this is very, very welcomed. The findings also reflect the student's voice, which is wonderful to hear, and also a school leader's voice on the matter, which is very, very positive. I was delighted to see that it also highlighted the excellent work that is undertaken by our schools, and in particularly by the enthusiastic MFL teachers that we have in our school. Like they have a lot of opportunities here now reading this report to strengthen their subject. You know, particularly when we, I know there was mentioned there that there was nervousness around the decline in the uptake of French. But after reading this report, I think it highlights a lot of positives and kind of a pathway forward that we can strengthen maybe the French class and not say, oh, it's up against another language like Spanish or, you know, Italian, that we can see as teachers that let's take this challenge on, let's make our subject like really interesting for the students. And like, although it's kind of indicated that Spanish may overtake French, it may not, because sometimes schools don't have that flexibility. They're I won't say stuck, that's the wrong word. They have the staff that they have. You know, that if you have a French teacher and an Italian teacher and a German teacher, that's what you have and that's what you offer. You may have two French teachers, so French is stronger in that school. So sometimes there are barriers, but with future planning and progression planning, then you can maybe see how to develop the languages further in the school. I suppose the findings in the report indicate that school leaders felt that students don't really connect learning languages with their future careers, but the students then gave us a little positive nugget there, because when the 75% of the first years reported that they enjoyed learning languages, and they identified, like other students identified, that they loved to communicate while traveling, and this was one of the main benefits they saw with learning. This is something that we could really, really build on. And, you know, I agree that there are a lot of jobs in the EU, and actually some of them are sponsored. They pay for training if you have two languages. And many of our students do have two languages, heritage languages, and they also learn a language in school. And particularly like even Irish, although it's not in the MFL, you know, if students have French and Irish, they're two European languages, and there are serious careers, and the Irish government does fund that. So you can ask the Department of Foreign Affairs or the EU ministers come in and talk to your students about the opportunities that are there, and also in the area of business and finance in the world, you know, not just in Europe, you know. So there are plenty of opportunities, and I think that the report then indicates that there's many things that we can do in terms of promoting career guidance, and, you know, really highlighting, maybe having a day where when we have our languages weeks, that we are highlighting the careers that are possible for our students. The report also highlighted, where there's a strong uptake of MFL, and it's that language is compulsory in junior cycle. And I think as school leaders, we have to take account of this. If we make taking up a language compulsory, we then will strengthen the uptake in senior cycle. So that is an important timetabling thing that we have to look at. And the successful schools also provide taster programs for students. So this gives them an opportunity where they may have a fear about a language, or they've never experienced a language. Now, I think that will change with the new primary curriculum, but it gives them a taste of what is possible. And the successful schools also try to avoid timetable clashes, and they offer 2 languages in their option blocks. So a student could study French and Italian, or they could study German or Italian. But again, this is based on whether they have the staffing in place. I really believe, though, we should strengthen the career guidance around the languages. I do think we are doing a lot at the moment in the school, but we could really focus in schools about career guidance, and we should expressly connect the languages to the benefits of careers and multilingualism, and how students would use these skills going forward. And since they do associate it positively with travel, we should use these experiences and really focus on exchanges like Erasmus, international programs with foreign trips. For example, if you were the French teacher there and you were worried about your French class in decline, I would be approaching maybe the TY coordinator or the Erasmus coordinator and saying, can we run a French trip to try and increase the language? We have done similar in our school, and you would find that a lot more children find if they get to go on the trip, with the foreign trip, they'll pick the language. If they're involved in the class, they get to go on the trip. Teacher recruitment was reported as a major national challenge, and we definitely experienced that in our school. It was very difficult. About 2-3 years ago, 55% of schools reported difficulty recruiting qualified MFL teachers, and that is hard, and has implications for schools with having a large number of languages on the timetable, or even several languages on the timetable. So subject availability is determined. Subject availability only can happen once you have the teachers available. Principals can support this by supporting teachers with professional development, professional learning, developing partnerships with universities like DCU there, and organising such as linking in with organisations such as the PPLI, and protecting language provision where possible. Like, can I offer 2 subjects in the option block at senior cycle? And if I can, how am I going to do that? One of the clearest themes, though, that I saw that was really strong throughout the report is that if you have a strong school culture and you have a leadership team behind that culture and behind the enthusiastic teachers, this makes a significant difference to languages in the school, and it directly influences the students' uptake. The visibility of languages in the school really, really matters. And I think we have to really be cognizant of that in different events, in our displays in the school, in our encouragement of our wonderful teachers. And schools with successful language provision promote languages as part of the identity and ethos of their school. And I think if we took that alone from the report, we would be doing very well. And again, I'll come back to, like, we can strengthen the culture by supporting MFL trips, exchanges, celebrating multilingualism, creating visible multilingual environments around the school, linking language with the wider identity of the school. Like, I know in my school, we have, I'd say, 50 languages in the school, and we try and celebrate as many of them as we can. Like, school leaders reported 76 home languages among students, but the first year students reported 86 home languages. So there's languages we don't even know about are spoken at home. And I think, the more we learn about this, our school cultures will become more enriched. An interesting point for future proofing is the strong growth in the heritage languages, and this is something dear to my heart because we've worked a lot in the school that I work in. So the heritage languages in Leaving Cert entries, especially in Ukrainian, Romanian, Polish and Russian, the report noted that these entries, although in their non-curricular languages, they've risen with a particular sharp increase in 2025. And I know in my school we heavily encourage and support students to take their heritage language if they can, and some of the teachers are able to give some after school extracurricular activities to support those students who have a heritage language. I chose Romanian as an example from the report, as we have Romanian students and Romanian teacher in our school. And Romanian is highlighted as a growing home language in the Irish schools, although Romanian doesn't appear on the mainstream curriculum subjects in school. But the report notes that Romanian was the second largest non-curricular Leaving Cert language in 2025 with 417 entries. And this reflects a broader demographic and the linguistic changes within the Irish education. And I think we have to start planning for that. Schools have the opportunity to promote inclusion and intercultural learning and strengthen identity and belonging by recognising these languages and recognising, for example, we recognise Romanian, and it has benefited our school. Like our Erasmus trip was to a Romanian school. Our different projects that we have with extracurricular activities with Romanian club, where sometimes I go down for my breakfast, a Romanian breakfast in the morning or in the afternoon, and they all speak Romanian. They teach us a few words, but it has become really part of our school, and the students' attendance has really improved because they know they have a sense of belonging there. And I think they're the type of opportunities that we need to recognise in our schools. It's not just about being in the classroom. The classroom makes the student more fluent in the language, and then the extra culture in the school brings the love of language, the love of learning. And we have to celebrate this diversity and integration approaches in our school and throughout our teaching. And going forward, schools may need to increase focus supports for students sitting non-curricular Leaving Cert languages. So like if maybe there are schools still in Ireland that haven't experienced that they would have non-curricular languages. So school leaders would possibly have to look at how are we supporting the children that take those languages? How are we encouraging them to do so? Because they do come out with the top grades, like they get H1, H2 in those heritage languages. And why would you not encourage your child or your student to take an exam that they would achieve at? We need to talk to our guidance counsellors about this. We need to talk to our MFL teachers or other interested teachers. And also when we're recruiting teachers, we need to look at what maybe heritage languages they have and how could they support. Like, for example, we have a Portuguese teacher and she supports students to take the Portuguese. We have a Romanian teacher. And, you know, when you have a teacher that they can link in with, that's really good. And we have to engage intentionally more with families and multilingual communities. My concluding observations, I know I talked for a long time, probably for more than 5 minutes, is overall this report suggested that learning languages in Ireland is very strong. However, its future successful implementation depends heavily on school leadership, staffing, the curriculum decisions, and to the extent of what how schools promote languages as relevant, inclusive, and future focus for students feeling like belonging in school. So that's it.
Brilliant, thank you, Kathy. And I think it's really important, as you were saying earlier, about the value that that a school leader can bring to this and the influence they can have within the school. I'm now going to go to our student panelist, Giovanna. and ask her a couple of questions. Giovanna, can you tell us what pupils in your school think about learning languages? What are the benefits that they perceive? And do they see languages as something that they might use in their career?
Surely. So I think that most our students see languages as a matter of communication. So most our school, we have TM from another school, and in based in Dublin, and we see many languages, like over 40 over 40 nationalities, and we see that the many of these languages are used for communications in a school environment, but also we see it as prospects of career sometimes as well. We enjoy the school trips when we have access to them, such as Erasmus. Our school participates every year of a few Erasmus trips, and as well as when we allow for exchange programs to happen. These are the kind of events that are very dear to our students' hearts. We really mark them in our calendar, and we encourages language learning for students who are undertaking the language as well. So not only as a way of um, if people are getting people interested in the language, but also for people who are studying the language currently. If there is an upcoming event, they'll put more effort in it as well. In terms of the future, or like our careers, and what do you think of languages as a career? I don't see languages encouraged as a profession. I know one or two people who would like to do I'd say it's business with languages as well, but it's not as encouraged. And yet I think that the colleges who offer clubs or any kind of languages approaches with, as well as the actual courses, are they are yet preferred, if that makes sense.
Yes, that's
Study
brilliant.
abroad
Yeah.
Yeah, study
And I know
abroad opportunities are
in
very
your school,
highlighted.
in your school, you have a languages ambassador program, don't you? Can you tell us really briefly what kind of things you do as a language ambassador?
Oh yeah. We have, I think, nearly 20 people for language ambassadors in our school, which I think is a relatively big portion considering that it's a small school. Language ambassadors are mainly responsible for introducing new pupils that speak the same language as you. So you present the school around, as well as if they have any issues like language barriers, they also facilitate contact between the school and the student or the students' families. And it's very important for our school community for them to feel a sense of belonging when coming into school. So you talked about on home languages. I think 86% of people had home languages, and this is a reality that we see as well. So many students would have their home languages, but sometimes they would also not have it available as a subject. So they either struggle because they haven't they have lost the ability of, say, reading or writing in their language due to poor contact with the language, or they wouldn't have, even though they are completely fluent with the language, they wouldn't have it as an option in the Living Start as well.
Great. Thank you, Giovanna. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, and there are a couple of questions in the chat, and I had a couple sent through as people registered. So the first question is one of the ones in the chat, which is about what can be done to promote language teaching as a career. Which of you would be interested to make a start on that, on answering that? And must be brief answers, because we've only got 6 minutes left and a couple of other questions. So anyone want to comment on that? Mairéad, Kathy?
I can briefly, if you like.
Yeah, Jennifer, yeah.
Because I think I mentioned it. Well, liaison with third level, between second and third level, it's very useful and ongoing. We are meeting career guidance teachers as frequently as we can, but I think probably we need more meetings, bringing second level students onto third level campuses and displaying the range of careers on offer. So a lot can be done by linking the second and third level, perhaps, to demonstrate the careers that are available.
Yeah.
And
Mairéad.
if I could just come in there as well, I think we need to put a focus on all the skills that are gained, all the competences that are developed through language learning. So again, that if they're not sure what route they want to go afterwards, that language is going to be an asset in any guise, in any career that they undertake afterwards.
Okay, brilliant. Another question in the chat is talking about lack of teacher professional learning opportunities as a perceived challenge to providing high quality MFL learning experiences. Would any of you like to comment on that?
Well, I know I've taken advantage of some of the initiatives that are available. Again, I think it differs greatly across the languages. Again, I think it depends perhaps on the cultural institutes, and a lot of it falls back on language associations also to provide in services. I find there is a lot of support for perhaps methodologies, but again, maybe slightly less for teacher confidence with regard to their own upskilling. I know the PPLI have programs there to support teachers who haven't been teaching a language for a while, and that's very useful again for teacher confidence and building. But again, with the language, it's just so important to stay up to date.
That's great. And a question that came in with the registrations was, what advice do you have for schools with a new intake who have covered different languages to differing levels? What advice would you have for them? Kathy, would you have anything?
I'll answer that there. I would say embrace it, because they now have developed language skills. So it doesn't actually matter what different languages they have learned. The fact that a child has learned a language or has been exposed to language is really important. And quite often you're not going to be able to match the language that they maybe learned in primary school or at home. Sometimes you might be that lucky school that has the resources to do that. But I think once you learn a language or you have experience with a language, it becomes easier to take other languages up. So I would harness the skills like that they have learned, so they're looking at vocab, they're looking at, how language is used. And I would really say, find the commonalities of learning language or learning a subject and use that for progressing. But it may be that you may not be able to match the language that they are coming in with, but you will be able to find the similarities. Okay.
Great, thank you. And the final question probably is, what do you all think about a language in addition to Irish being compulsory for leaving certificate in Ireland? Compulsory languages? Kathy?
I think no. I think that if you make something compulsory, I think it will turn people off it. I think you have to develop the love of languages. And I think making it compulsory in junior cycle, that everyone tries it, it's a taster, it's lower stakes than Leaving Cert. And I think then encourage students to take it for Leaving Certificate. But I think making it compulsory at junior cycle gives them a taste of what's possible. And then they can make choices. And if you can give as many languages in junior cycle as possible, or that the school has resources for it, that would be the ideal. But I think forcing something for Leaving Cert is
maybe not a good idea, I don't think. What about the others? Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's great. That's great. Well, it's 1 minute to 6. So I'm going to say thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you very much to our panelists. It's really great to have heard the results of Language Trends Ireland, and I hope this is the beginning of a collaboration between British Council, Queen's University and PPLI, that we can continue to all work together to talk about the importance of languages in our countries. I think language, as well as giving you the skills to talk to people in other countries, I don't think you can underestimate the intercultural skills that come with that as well. The listening skills, empathy, understanding other people's points of view, and so on. So I think learning languages are so important, and it's really great to have been with you all this evening. So thank you all so much for your contribution. Thank you, everyone. Good evening.
Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you very much.